It's 72 and my brother was 71. 2,200 miles long. It goes through 14 states, goes over 600 mountains. The elevation changes in feet is 465,000. So it's almost a 500,000 feet of elevation changes. And we had full packs and started walking, and I got to that first steep section and I stopped and turned around and looked at my brother. I started crying.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start A Joyful Rebellion. Ever wonder what kind of conviction it takes to start a nearly 2,000-mile trek after turning 72? Especially when what you're carrying isn't just a pack, but decades of loss, recovery, brotherhood, and unfinished business? Today's guest, Rand Timmerman, is a Vietnam veteran, longtime recovery advocate, and author of Spiritual Passage, the book born from his Appalachian Trail journey that became equal parts physical test, emotional reckoning, and spiritual reset. In this conversation, Rand opens up about the real reasons he stepped onto the trail, the moments that nearly ended the hike, the encounters that changed him, and how sharing his story has helped others battling addiction, grief, and the thought that it's ever too late to start something epic. If you've ever felt the pull towards something bigger or wondered whether your next chapter can still include something bold, this episode is going to hit home, so let's jump in. Rand Timmerman, thank you so much for being here on A Joyful Rebellion today.
Thank you, James. Really appreciate the opportunity.
You have gone on an amazing journey, and I talked to a lot of people who have gone through a journey. Sometimes it's a philosophical journey, sometimes it's a journey through life, but you went on an actual journey. You went, 2,000 miles on the Appalachian Trail.
Yes, it's 72 and my brother was 71. It's almost 2,200 miles long. It goes through 14 states, from Georgia to Maine, Catadin Mountain in Maine, and Springer Mountain is the start in Georgia. Goes over 600 mountains. Half of them are named. Every state has a bear mountain.
Okay.
Yeah, and the elevation changes in feet is 465,000. So it's almost a 500,000 feet of elevation changes. Yeah, you're going up or down pretty much all the time. In the beginning in Georgia, it's really roly-poly. You'll go over 7, 8 mountains in 11, 12 miles. And we normally would walk from daylight to late afternoon because we're kind of slow old men, but we never stopped. We actually averaged 11 miles a day, which is incredible. But anyway, in the beginning there, I was in a lot of pain. I have an artificial knee in my left leg. Now I have an artificial hip. So I limp because my right leg is a half-inch shorter. So I'm limping through I like to brag, I was the limpiest man to ever walk the Appalachian Trail. But in the beginning, it was really hard because you're either going up or down. And I was like, God, just give me flat, like 100 yards flat, right? And I go down a mountain, I get down to the bottom, and I go like flat 10 feet, and you're going up the next 10 feet.
That's why, and that's the thing that really jumped out at me, because a lot of people that I've talked to, they might say, oh yeah, I tried the Appalachian Trail in my 20s, or maybe in their 30s, or maybe they didn't have kids and had that midlife crisis and they hit the trail to find themselves. And you decided to do it at 72. And one thing that keeps coming up as a theme on this show when I talk to people who have been through what I call their own joyful rebellion is they're either running towards something or they're running away from something. And it's often a dance between the two. But what was that journey for you? Were you running towards something on that trail?
A little bit of both. I had quite a serious alcohol problem later in my life. I knew the first time I drank at 13, it might be a problem someday. I really didn't have any difficulty with it until I got in my late 50s, early 60s, and then I got really bad. So I had struggled with that. At the time we decided to do the Appalachian Trail, I had been sober 4 years. So I was kind of running towards that a little bit to maintain it. And I would do imaginary meetings in my head with my fellow sober alcoholics. And I had guys call me every day and tell me they were doing okay and stuff like that. We had a set time I turned my phone on. So I was kind of, hiking in a celebration of that and maintenance of it. My brother and I probably both running away from a lot of the tragedies that we saw, especially during the Vietnam War. And he had just lost his wife, so that was the primary impetus of this. So he was definitely choosing to treat his overwhelming grief with physical pain. If that makes any sense,
It does trade one pain for another.
Yeah, and then being in nature and being in God's paradise, there was that aspect of it, of course, too, for him and for me. But yeah, it was amazing.
And you wrote a book coming out of that journey, and it's called Spiritual Passage. And it said over 500 photos in that book. Who was the picture taker?
I was. That's a really good question, James, because my brother and I had totally different mindsets. His mindset was, I'm going to do this. I'm my head down. He studied maps. He studied everything very carefully. And he was just going to do it like he was in the military. I gotta do this every day. I was more like, I will never walk here again. And I'm 72 years old. This has got to be amazingly special for me. I decided to do it like I was back in the 70s or even the 60s and just hike it and not even look at the topographical map and see what it was going to look like. From my brother's studying maps day and night. And I just decided, like, I'm the first guy that ever decided to do this, and I'm just going to go, And I took 5,000 pictures. I mean, it was just amazing for me. I would walk around a corner, and I go, oh my God, look at that. I take a picture, and I talked to people and tried to make it a spiritual journey in a real way for me. So I took 5,000 pictures. My brother and I both kept journals. His journals were totally different than mine.
Wow.
Yeah, he would write.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, he would write about very precise. He's a commercial pilot, right? So everything's by the book. So where we were, how high up we were, how far we went, elevation changes, point A, point B, and all that kind of stuff. And I pretty much just wrote about what I saw in the pictures. I wrote down a lot of trail names. Everybody has a trail name. Ron's was attitude indicator, which is an instrument on a plane that tells you what position the plane is relative to the horizon. So his was AI, attitude indicator, and mine was he gave me mine. Mine was Rand Bow. So it was a play on words.
Yeah.
Oh my God, James. So, and actually that almost got me in trouble. When we got into the whites, there wasn't hardly anybody around. I mean, you hike all day and hardly see anybody. And one day I ran into two couples. And the very first couple, the guy looks at me, he goes, hey, I always said my name. My name is Rambo, and I reach out my hand. So that way they would tell me theirs, and then I made sure I put it in my journal at night. So I did that. The guy said, oh, yeah. Can I have my picture taken with you? And he's putting his arm around me and looking at me. He goes, I thought you'd be bigger. And the wife is standing back like, ooh, And the first time I go, that's really weird. And then it happened again later in the day. I ran into another couple. So that night, my brother and I were sitting there eating, getting ready to get in the tent and stuff. And I said, bro, there's something weird happening here today. And I'm thinking you might have something to do with it. And he goes, oh, yeah. I said, well, I ran into, and I told him, right? And he's not looking at me. He's just kind of looking down. What's going on, bro? Oh, no. Come on. Okay, well, I decided to tell people that you were the guy that the movie Rambo was made about. I said, don't do that. You'll get me killed.
Uh-oh. That's
It
funny.
was funny.
That's funny. A little still pranking each other after all those
Oh,
years.
yeah.
The brotherly thing.
Yep, exactly.
That's funny. So, how many pairs of shoes does it take to hike 2,200 miles?
Shoes will maintain their structure about 500 miles.
Okay.
So,
Okay. I was just curious about that because at some point you had to re-up, right? You had to like trade them in, retreads or something,
yeah,
right?
I had 4 pairs. My brother had some extra pairs too. We actually used, we had 2 vehicles. So when I went to, after Edie died, Ronnie's wife, I was talking to him on the phone. He lived in Utah. I lived in Syracuse, New York. So we were on the opposite coast pretty much our whole adult lives. We didn't see each other a heck of a lot. I had never been to his home. He'd always come east in the summer and we'd spend maybe one day together and family stuff. But I had called in and I could tell he was not doing great. So I went out to see him in January of 2018. And we're hiking in the desert in Utah. We were both pretty good shape. We both turned out I walked 7-8 miles a day and he was doing a lot of hiking and stuff. He had run some marathons. I ran 26 marathons. We were both kind of pretty athletic guys our whole lives and kind of the same waist size for decades, that kind of thing. So we were in pretty good shape. And he said, and I did quite a bit of hiking, James, especially the Smoky Mountains. And I knew seen bear. I had done fake charges with bears and all that kind of stuff over the years. And Ronnie turned out had done quite a bit in Utah. But I didn't think he was serious about hiking the Appalachian Trail. So I said, you're not going to really do that, are you? And he said, yeah, I am. It turned out he bought maps. He got all the gear. I mean, he really prepared. And I said, well, how are you going to do it? And he said, I'm going to take a bus and go to Springer Mountain and start walking. And I said, well, that plan really sucks.
Yeah, it makes it sound simple, doesn't it?
I'll go with you. So we met down in Springer Mountain. I said, when are you going to hike it, Ron? He goes, March 22nd. I was hoping he'd say, like, well, I don't know, next year or something, right? No, he had it all figured out. So I said, all right, I'll meet you in Springer Mountain on March 22nd. And I did, in a snowstorm. The first pictures in the book, you could see the snow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, snow well, I guess it's on a mountain. You're in Georgia. I'm in North Carolina, so I'm thinking how often it snows here, and it's not a lot.
No, but
in March especially.
Well, your western border is 60 miles or so, I think, is co-joined with Tennessee. So you're actually walking on the Tennessee-North Carolina border, and it's rugged territory, very rugged territory. Yeah, beautiful, awesome too. But so what happened was we had 2 vehicles, and Ronnie knew from looking at the maps, there's some kind of a road going over the Appalachian Trail every 10 to 15 miles for a lot of it. Okay. And the roads are some are really bad, but there's roads. So what we ended up doing was, like, we met at Springer Mountain and then we took a vehicle to the next road up, basically. And in that section, there was more than one, but we took one vehicle up to a road that's about 10 miles away. And then in the beginning, we hiked together. And then when we got the other vehicle, we would go back and bring it forward, right? But and his son Rick was with us the first 2 weeks. But after Rick left, what we did, we just pretty much camped every night on the trail. I like to brag, I slept every night in a tent on the Appalachian Trail, which was true. But a lot of times my truck was a few feet away, right? So what it allowed us to do is we didn't have to carry a full pack. I usually carried about a 20-pound pack. I carried extra water and first aid and stuff. A lot of people were not really well prepared. And there's not much water at the top of mountains. Right?
Yeah.
So I always carried 24-ounce bottles of water, for example. So we had, just a day pack. What would happen is in the morning, I would just start hiking. Ronnie would go up to the next road. He would go south. I would go north. We'd meet in the middle. for a few minutes, and then he would continue on down. He would get my truck, drive back around up to where he had parked, and then I would come out, and we'd stay there, and that's how we did it. We leapfrogged. Now, there's lots of places you can't do that. You can't do that at the Smokies. You can, Clingman's Dome to north is Route 40. That's like 32 miles. And then from Clingman's Dome down to Fontana Dam, going south is another 35 miles. There's an area called the Priest where you have to backpack. And then in the Whites in New Hampshire, there's Mount Washington. You know, that's a 35-mile swing around, so to speak. There's actually a lot of hikers out there that are not doing it traditional way, but none of them were as old as we were. There was a group of hikers in their 60s, and they had a big ass motorhome.
Oh wow!
And a driver and a cook and
good grief! Yeah. So they were glamping.
Yes, exactly.
Whatever the glamping
the Appalachian Trail
equivalent of hiking is. Yeah. How about that? Well, it sounds like you and your brother, you know, you're related. Your brothers, you're similar in age, and you were having two completely different experiences while you were on the trail. The way you describe it, it almost sounds like he's a sports announcer just giving all the stats of how many points and how many assists and all the things that you would hear thrown out on a sports channel, and with the elevations, with the distances, with all the maps. And it sounds like you were having more of an experience visually. You were looking around, you were taking the pictures, you were taking it in, you were present to the fact that you weren't going to cover these tracks again, most likely. And you were taking it in as much as you could. What was the point where you kind of noticed that huge difference and you started to really appreciate everyone has their own way of looking at things, and it sounds like you were taking it all in so you could remember it. When did you start to really own that and appreciate it?
I was convinced that we were never going to be able to do it. So my mindset was totally different from Ronnie. And when I wrote the book and he read it, I had put in there in the very beginning when we were in Georgia, 2 weeks max. And he got a little bit excited and looked at me. You didn't think we were going to? No way. I figured 2 weeks max. I mean, It was in the beginning, even though we both were in pretty good shape, walking 7-8 miles in upstate New York, and even in Utah, because all the trails are basically in canyons and stuff like that, it's a totally different thing. In the mountains, if you can do 1.5 miles in an hour with 2 poles going, not just steady beat, it is very hard. And for me, with my bad knee and my bad leg, going down was incredibly painful. And it took us probably the first week before I even started to get in any kind of real Appalachian Trail hiking form. But it did come. It did come eventually. So there was that aspect. Ronnie he didn't have the physical disabilities that I had, so he was a little bit, although he did get shin splints, and it's funny, the two of us, if you read our journals, there's nothing in there there's a little bit in mine about the pain and the fatigue and how hard it was, right? And Ronnie and I never complained to each other. We never talked about hardly anything, to be honest, right?
Yeah. Okay. I can understand
and
that.
Then one day we were in the Smoky Mountains, and we always turned our phones back on in the morning. And this point, we're a long ways away because I'm going north, he's going south, and we're carrying full packs, right? And I turned my phone on, and let's see, at that point, he was behind me. That's right. And because he had gone down to Fontana Dam and was coming up that way. And so I'm going north. So we're both going north, but he hasn't caught up to me yet. And my vehicle's at the other end. So anyway, he calls me and he goes, "Hey, bro, I'm having a real problem." And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I'm having cramps really, really bad. I can't hardly move." I said, "Okay, hang on." And I dropped my pack and went back. I was carrying little bottles of apple vinegar. Apple vinegar is very salty. So if you're having cramps, that sodium will take care of it, right? So I went back. He was just hardly moving, and he drank a little, I don't know, 4-ounce bottle, and went right away, just like that.
Wow.
But I said, well, how long have you been dealing with this? He said, oh my God, it's been killing me for days. You could have told me, bro.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Was there a point on the trail where you did think you were where you're like, oh, this is too hard? Tell me about a moment that either one of you or both of you wanted to quit.
Yeah. We are Vietnam veterans, so we both have suffered from pretty bad nightmares at some point. We were probably, I'm going to say we were up in Northern Virginia. The weather was getting pretty hot. It was really laborious. And I don't know. I woke up in the tent and I heard my brother screaming. And I got out of the tent and, I'm done. I'm going to quit. I can't do it anymore. I had an awful nightmare. And he started telling me he was crying, and we don't cry. And he was telling me about the nightmare, and it involved Edie and all this stuff. And the sun was just starting to come up, and I made some hot coffee, and he wanted cocoa. I gave him cocoa. I had my arm around him and said, come on, bro. He said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And he was sobbing. And I think we both knew that when you make decisions in the dark, they're usually not good decisions, right? And then when the daylight comes, we're like, okay, So anyway, I've said, look, let's just hike today. And now I'm suffering. I'm still hurting quite a bit. There's a part of me that doesn't want to do this anymore, right? Well, but I'm saying, come on, we'll hike today, and then when you meet me at noon, if you say, you don't want to hike anymore, then I'm good with it. We'll just go home. And so he finally settled down, and I left, and I started hiking, so he didn't have any choice, and he went around, and then we met at noontime, and I saw him coming, and I'm like, yes, come on. And he came up to me, and he never said a word. And he walked away, and I was like, okay. So we didn't stop. Yeah. And then he had an experience Father's Day in 2018 where he was really still in a lot of grief, and the pain of the grief was probably worse than the physical pain. It was still driving him quite a bit, I think. And it was a really dark day, and we had actually met, and it was a ranger there by the name of Gene Anderson that we had met a couple times over the days, because he was hiking around in there with groups of people and stuff. And we were talking to him, and Ronnie said, it's really dark in here. Yeah, you need a flashlight. And then Ronnie left and came around a corner, and it was a beautiful, there's a picture of it in the book. If you go to June, 21st, I think, of 2018, Father's Day, you'll see it there. It looks like a huge halo on the trail way up ahead. And it looks like there's something in it, like a man standing there or something. And they could be Jesus, it could have been Buddha, it could be, I don't know, it could be anything, right? And he panicked a little bit and started to walk away from it. It was so overwhelming. And then he said, no, I've never walked away. And I don't know. And then he felt like he was communicating with Edie and our father, who was a Mustang pilot during World War II. He had gotten polio when he was 27. He ended up paralyzed from the waist down the rest of his life. Our father was a real hero. He was a real man. And he spent 8 months in an iron lung, if you can even imagine what that would have been like. So I never knew my father as a normal guy. He was a tough guy. And a hardworking guy. But anyway, he felt like he could, that Edie and Dad were saying, it's all right, Ron, we're here. You can do this. And it changed him. It was like a spiritual experience for him.
Yeah. I want to touch on the spiritual part because that's the name of your book, Spiritual Passage.
Mhm.
And what was that the point where you started to realize, this is a physical journey. This is a lot of emotions have probably come up for you individually. And then you had that experience. And then we started this talking about, are you running away from something or running towards something? It sounded like that experience may have been one of the first times you realized you were kind of moving into the spiritual part of that journey. Is that what was going on for you as well?
Yes. For me, I had a sponsor who helped me get sober 4 years before in 2014. He talked quite a bit about if I did the trail, how would I maintain my sobriety program? And he had recommended, I have a pretty good brain actually when it's not sodded with alcohol. It works pretty good. And he had me memorize the readings that we do in the 12-step program that I'm still in today, and I still go every day, and I still help other men. And he said, well, just memorize the readings and then do a meeting in your head. So I would do that in the morning usually. And it was weird because I would picture myself in a meeting and the people in there, and I would bring up a topic in my head and everybody would talk about it. And I would kind of know what they would probably say. And it was like the easiest hour of the day because it all was, and I'd just be floating along. So that was part of my spiritual aspect of it. But other things happened too. One day I came around a corner and these coy dogs, wild coyotes, basically, they were real coyotes. I shouldn't have said coy dogs. Anyway, a whole pack of them is coming right at me. And I'm like, whoa, baby. And I'm on top of a mountain, but it's forested. And they're just flying. It was the most beautiful. I didn't even have time to get my camera, take a picture or anything. They just come flying by me and they split like I was a ship in the water.
Oh,
it went right around me. And,
why.
I turned around and it only took about 5 seconds, if that. But it was amazing. And then I'm like, what the heck? What's going on? And then I look ahead and I see a bear coming, and the bear just kind of went off to one side but like, wow. And it just like, holy crap, this is just amazing. And then I had a really bad experience one night on the trail. I was convinced I was going to die. I don't know if you want to talk about that right now, but anyway, when we went through the Smokies, it was really bad weather. For 5 days, it just poured buckets. And the Smokies are beautiful, right? Normally you can see for miles and miles and miles. In the last couple of days, it finally did, and I got some pretty nice pictures. But in the middle of that, I decided to go to a gap on the trail. It's called False Gap. And the reason was because the shelters were absolutely full, and the tents were all underneath the where you were supposed to hang your food so the bears couldn't get it. That didn't appeal to me much to be camped out where the bears might come to try to get the food. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I just took off in the middle of this rainstorm, and I ended up at dusk. I'm at False Gap, and there's no gap. There's no gap. And I'm standing on a ridge, James, that is 12 to 20 feet wide, straight down on both sides, hundreds and hundreds of feet. I put my tent right in the middle of the trail because it's the only place that I got with some grass in it and to put the stakes in. Otherwise, it's rock. And I took a leak, and I'm looking down, and I can see a tree behind me. So I'm on a hell of a cliff. I'm in a really bad spot. Mm-hmm. But it's almost dark, and I got in the tent, and the winds came up, and it was the most ferocious storm I've ever been outside in my whole life. And it sounded like freight trains. And the way where I was in the Smokies was a very deep valley. It went right away from where I was. It's very narrow where I was, and then it spread way out. I realized this the next day. So it was like a big V coming right into where I was, right? And the winds are coming from that area. And it sounded like freight trains. And the freight trains are going someone would come up and they'd go to the right of me, and then someone would go to the left, and then I hear one that was coming right at me, and I'm like, oh my God. And my brother said, were you hanging onto the rods of the tent? We both had like mountain tents. We had really good tents with poles that crossed in over the top of you. He said, were you holding the rods? And I said, hell no. I was pushing down as hard as I could with my feet on the stakes at the one end and my hands on the other. Because if the stakes didn't hold, I was gone. Wow. And I felt like I was in a body bag, and I saw a lot of body bags in Vietnam. I knew I was in really bad, and I was praying to God. It's kind of like, I've been a good boy. I've been sober 4 years. I've helped a lot of guys. And but if you want me to die tonight, I guess I'm going to die. But I'd really rather not. Yeah. But I was convinced there's no way. And that tent was collapsing on top of me. When those freight trains went right over me, that tent was like beating me to death. Like an accordion going boom, 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 like that, right on my back.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Wow. It was scary as hell. Scariest thing I ever went through when nobody was shooting at me.
Yeah.
And when the next morning it started, finally it just started getting light. The wind let up a little bit. And then eventually, as it did get light, the wind just kind of died down, thank God. And I got out of the tent, turned my phone on, and one of my guys was calling me, hey, Rand. I said, hey, how you doing? He said, oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. He said, I'm a little worried about you because I was watching the weather. They said there was tornadoes where you are. And I said, well, I didn't see any tornadoes, but it was bad. I didn't tell him how bad it was because I didn't want him to worry about me. But yeah, for me, that was one of those moments. And then I had another bad one where I fell down a mountain in Wilcox Mountain in Massachusetts on a rock slide. Really bad. I was almost to the top. When you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, it still amazes me to even think about it. You will come across rock slides. And I'm talking about big rocks, car-sized rocks. And you can see where they just wiped out the whole side of the mountain. They're everywhere. A lot of times you're going across them, so that's not too bad, right? But even then, you step on a rock the size of a Volkswagen, and it moves. That's not a good thing. But a lot of times you'd be coming along, and in Wilcox Mountain in Massachusetts, I got up near the top, and there's this rock side. And I'm looking up at it, and I'm going, there's no way that they expect us to go up there. And then I look way up, and there's a white slash mark. I go, oh, my God. So I climbed all the way up that top of that thing, and I'm about 10 feet from the top. And I'm using my poles, and one of them slips, and I should have just let myself fall face forward because I would have been fine, right? I would have just fallen down, and I fell every day anyway, but I didn't. I stabbed with the other one, and when I did, it did catch, and it flipped me around 180 degrees. I tried to correct with the other one. It slid, and I did a swan dive off that rock slide down. And James, I closed my eyes because I knew this is going to hurt a lot. And it hurt way worse than anything I ever imagined. And I probably would have been killed for sure, but I didn't slide very far, and I stopped. And what happened was my foot got wedged between two rocks, thank God. And I just laid there for, oh, my God. And I was covered with blood and all that. So it took a while for me to kind of get myself reconstituted. And I crawled up to the top, and I got all the way up there, and I finally stood up, and it felt like somebody had taken a wire band off of a barrel and put it around my hips, and then just took a big old, vice grip thing and tightened it down as tight as they could. And I'm looking down that rock slide, and there's no way I'm going down. I'm not going back. And I've already gone 3 miles. I got to go 9 more miles. So I turned around and started trudging. And eventually, as you probably know, once you get moving again, the pain will ebb and it'll turn into just kind of a big old ache. And I met my brother, and he said, what happened to you? What do you want to do? And I said, well, I don't have any choice. Nobody's going to come and get you. Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't do that. So I ended up walking out and pitched the tent. Next morning I couldn't move.
I
I could
bet.
not move. And I guys got up and Ronnie says, we gotta go home, bro. I said, yeah. So we ended up going home. And then 30 days later, and I didn't get medical treatment or anything like that. And then 30 days later, within a couple of days, I started walking again because I'm an idiot and I just do what I want to do, you know. And so by the time he called me, he said, "You want to try to finish it?" And I said, "Sure." And away we went. But we'd lost a lot of time. So I didn't finish it either, James. I only did 1,863 miles out of the 22. And we got into the Whites, and then we were going up Mount Washington. We actually jumped ahead because Mount Washington was closed because of weather. They get snow in Mount Washington in New Hampshire. It's the it's not the highest mountain in North America, but it's I don't know 6,000 something feet, but it has the highest winds ever recorded, 247 miles per hour, I think. So it's famous for that, and the weather up there can change in a heartbeat. So they had it closed, and so we went up to we did Musalak, which is a really tall mountain. That was something. That was amazing too. And then I did Wolf the next day, and then we went back to do Washington Mountain, and we had full packs because that's a 35 miler, and started walking, and I got to that first steep section, and I stopped and turned around, looking at my brother. I started crying because I was done. The pain was so bad from that fall, and it had come back, and I just couldn't. And I'm like, I can't, bro. I'm done. I'm sorry. I felt really bad, but so he took me home, and he ended up finishing it with his son Rick, who was 62 at that time, and I was having a hip replacement. So I
Wow.
got a new hip,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
and then he did do it the whole way, so that's good.
When you came back and you came back with all those pictures and you started looking through those, started reliving the journey, then you decided to put your thoughts down, put it into a book. What was the inspiration for doing that?
For me, it was to have a record. I was proud of what we did. I'll be honest, I was
Mm,
pretty damn proud of what we did. I felt it was pretty unusual. Edie had 7 kids when Ronnie married her. She was the best friend of our mother. When Ronnie came back from Vietnam, he
okay.
met Edie, and the day he met her, she had 3 of her kids, the youngest 3, with her. And they went on a date, I guess. I don't know. And Edie was 14 years older, and they fell madly in love. Ronnie married her. Those 7 kids have produced 27 grandchildren and 30 great grandchildren because
Whoa.
they went into the Mormon church, and they moved to
Mm,
Utah. That's why they went to Utah. Ronnie became a bishop in the Mormon church. My brother was always a very spiritual man. I came back from the war. I was the Antichrist. I mean, I don't have
mm,
anything to do with any of that stuff. You're never going to convince me about this whole higher power. See, that was a big problem for me when I tried to get sober. So Ronnie had this huge family, and I've got a big family too. And I just thought about the grandkids and the great-grand. They'll never know. They'll never even know. And I got all these pictures, and it's beautiful. It's
mm.
beautiful. So I
Yeah.
decided to do a daily journal type thing, and Ronnie gave me his journal, and I pick out the 5 or 6 best pictures for each day, and then in it I wrote about where we were, used Ronnie's information, how far we went, and then here's what it looks like along the way. And
Yeah.
part of it was for me, it was like, okay, I got proof, right?
Yeah.
I got proof. There it is, right there. I was there. I took that picture. That kind of,
That's it.
yeah. So I actually did the book originally for the family, and I had it printed. And at the time, I was still working. I've always been working with other guys on a daily basis. And in the book, I decided to put in my spiritual journey in the program of alcohol recovery that I'm in. It's an anonymous program, and it's for alcoholics.
Mm,
But I have to. One of our traditions is that we don't run around promoting ourselves. Because
mm,
if I did that and I went back out, that would be not good. at all. So I'm a little bit careful about how I do it. In the book, I don't really talk too much about the program, but I do talk about my experience of how I got sober with a man helping me in detail,
Yeah.
my journey. You know, we have family members that every family has people in it that have addiction problems of one sort or another, pretty much. So there was that aspect
Yeah.
to it. And then I realized after a while, it was helping people. My daughter's very involved in the church, and one of the pastors asked me for the book. I had made a presentation at the church about the hike and gave it to a person that was struggling really hard with addiction. And then it got back to me that it helped them, right? To think, well, maybe I can do something different. So then I thought, well, maybe I can help people. So that eventually led to me getting a real publisher and publishing it and putting it on Amazon and all that, as you know. So
I'd like to talk more about that because that's kind of where I was going, but you beat me to it. You had already been working with a group, and you said working with men who were getting over an alcohol addiction, and you were doing that before you went on the hike. And when you came back and when you wrote the book, and then you found out that people were being helped by it who were on that journey that you were already helping people with to get over their addiction. What kind of light bulbs went off for you? Like, yeah, I did go through this. I've been through a lot of different journeys in my life, and I do want to. You had a heart to help people through their own issues. And I find that when I do talk to people who've been on some pretty epic journeys, whether that's a physical journey, whether that's emotional, spiritual, whatever it is in their life, first of all, they tend to feel like, oh, I never thought I would figure this out, and I figured it out, or at least I figured out enough to get me a little further along, and now I want to help others figure it out. I see that pattern, and it sounds like that's something that you've wanted to do. What was the point where you realized this book could be a vehicle to help you reach more people in that way?
when I wrote it, I think I realized it was
Okay.
helping me. You know, at the time,
Okay.
I was also working with other men. I have never not been working with other men on a daily basis, using the program's book and doing the things that my sponsor taught me to do to stay sober. The biggest one was day one. He said, "You better pray to that God you don't believe in." See, I struggled for 3.5 years in the program unsuccessfully.
Mm.
I ended up with 12, which is kind of ironic when you think about 12-step program. I ended up with 12 3-month chips. You get a chip if you stay sober for whatever period of time, right? I got 12 3-month I could never get the fourth one. I could never make it the fourth month. And the reason is because of my defiant attitude that I didn't need to have a higher power. I was going to figure this out just like I did everything else in my whole life, you know? And it went back to, and you're talking about why do we want to help other people? Well, for me, it's part of my psyche. My dad was paralyzed when I was a kid. I was with him. If I wasn't in school or in scouts or something like some, regular activity, I was with him because I was the oldest and I had to help him pretty much all that. So I didn't have a regular childhood. Then I go in the Marine Corps. It damn near gets me killed at least 20 times. And then I ended up being a JAG officer. How the hell does that happen? That was the biggest fluke. Nobody's ever followed the career path in the Marine Corps that I did. And it was just a fluky thing that happened. There was some people trying to help me not get killed. Sent me off in a different direction, and I ended up being a lawyer. And then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I got my college degree and got my law degree, and I spent 40 plus years helping people solve their problems. That's what lawyers do, right?
Yeah.
And I got paid for it, which was really cool. And I liked it. I was a litigator. I was in court pretty much every day, and kept me busy. And my other problems, I was pretty good at helping people with their problems. I wasn't very good at helping people myself, right? And so by the time alcohol owned me, at the end, if you're an alcoholic, you metabolize alcohol differently. We know that today. The American Medical Association figured it out in 1956. That's when it became defined as a disease in the American Medical Association guidelines. And they figured out that alcoholics metabolize alcohol differently. We create an excess of acetone, and the acetone is what gives you that unbelievably powerful need to drink. And I would start drinking and stay drunk for days when I absolutely did not want to. I could not stop. How does that happen? And then I see people that were just like me staying sober. And I can't. And the reason was they had a higher power helping them out. And eventually my sponsor, who I wrote about in the book a great deal, because Billy took me through the steps of the program that got me sober, and he knew how to keep me sober while I was doing that so I could get through the whole program. And the way was, he told me day one, you pray to that God you don't believe in. And I started objecting. Billy, you know I don't believe in God. I told you that for that whole day you was in the emergency room with me, the first day we met, because he took me to the emergency room. Yeah, Rand, he says, well, you pray to that God you don't believe in, or you will get drunk again. I didn't want to do that. I said, okay. I've been praying every day since, James. And I've not picked up a drink. I had to do a whole bunch of other stuff. So, but the impetus for me to write about my experience was because it was, it was cathartic or whatever. But also, I don't know, I just felt like if a guy like me can be humble enough to admit I need a higher power, I need a power outside of myself because mine wasn't good enough, and it's got to be bigger than me. So it's a higher power. It's pretty simple, Rand, when you think about it that way, right? And then what does that higher power want me to do if I'm an alcoholic? He doesn't want me to drink. It's real simple. It doesn't have to be complicated.
It's basic,
yeah. So anyway, I just took that as the basis of it and wrote about my experience. And I'm hoping it'll help people. I think it does.
What's some of the feedback you've gotten from people who've read the book?
Good. I mean, I've never had negative feedback at all. They are impressed. I don't have a big head about this, okay? I'm very humble about it. But they're impressed with my honesty. And some people are embarrassed about it. There are people in my family who are not real happy with me, right? You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But I just put everything out there and let people decide for themselves. But the point is, if a guy like me can get sober, maybe you can too. That's the message, right? And it can also relate to other difficulties. I have a lot of people get to be our age. I'm 80 now. I'm still walking, well, when I can, I'm still walking 5-6 miles a day. But there's a lot of people my age that are just waiting to die. And then I see the ones that are not waiting to die, that go to meetings that are older than me with their walkers and their oxygen bottles, and they have a smile on their face and they have joy in their lives. So I want to inspire those people too. I want to, whatever it is, whatever your difficulty is, you can probably change your attitude and have a much better life and not suffer so much.
Have you had people who are in their maybe late 50s, early 60s, and they're like, oh man, I never even thought I could do that. But to read this book, and you were 72 when you started this journey on the trail, and gosh, I never thought I could do something like that. And now I'm thinking a little bit more big picture. You know, have you gotten people who were like, geez, I thought I was too late to start anything cool like that?
Yeah, I've had young people in their 20s and 30s several times this happened at a book show, and they come running up and they go, oh my God, if you can, maybe I can do, I've always thought I wanted to do this, Rand. You know, kind of, I get that response all the time.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
Because I could see that happening where people are like, oh, I've always wanted to do that thing, and here you are, you've done it, and I was always waiting, and I guess there's really no need to, or I guess I could wait a little bit longer, just get all my stuff, get the kids off to wherever they need to be, and then go hike it out on the trail and not have to think that I'm leaving that behind as a lifetime goal just because I hit a certain age.
Right.
So that's really cool.
And there are some people that like do a state every year or do a section every year. They call them sectional hikers.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Ronnie and I were a little bit like that too. It took us 3 years, so we didn't do it all at once. We did 1,400 and some miles the first year, and we were in New Jersey or New York, actually. It was one of those days. It was hot at James. It was like 100 degrees, 100%
Oh,
humidity. We had both lost like 35 pounds. We looked like Auschwitz survivors, you know.
oh no.
And Ronnie was waiting for me in the parking lot. And when I came off the trail, I noticed he hadn't, usually he would have like started setting up things and getting ready, you know, at nightfall, whatever. And he's standing there with his hands on his hips. And he looks at me. He says, "You want to go home, bro?" I said, "Yeah." So we did. And then the next year he called me up and said, "You want to try to finish it?" And I said, "Sure."
Yeah.
So we did go from there. We did another 400 miles or so. I did. And then I had my
Wow.
little incident, but
This has been such a fun adventure to talk about this with you. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think the people should know about a journey like this? If they've ever even considered, thought, or heard a relative say, you know, I'm thinking about hiking that trail, what advice would you give them?
go do it. Just pick a section. Virginia's absolutely stunningly gorgeous because there's so many vistas where you just walk around the corner and you're way up there, but you can see 50 miles of countryside. It's all
Whoa.
green and lakes and just gorgeous. And the raptors. And if you think you want to do something, I mean, it's spiritual and very inspiring just to go out into the woods. Another quick story, James. We were in New Jersey. I think I'd just gone over the Hudson River. I was up the next mountain, whatever it was. And I'm thinking, well, I'm in New York now. It's got to be easier, right? Oh my God, that mountain was so bad. I got
Oh,
all the way up the top, and then we stayed there. And then the next day I think I did the next mountain. I'm on top of it, and there's nobody around. And I'm standing there I'm at the very top of the mountain. I'm looking at some raptors flying around, and it's just beautiful. There isn't any contrails. There's no sign of humanity at all anywhere. It's like I'm the only person on the whole planet that God created, right? And I'm standing there and just exhilarating in that. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, the valleys below me. I'm in New Jersey. I was right on the edge of I'm in New Jersey. There's millions of people right down below me. And yet it's as if I'm the only person in the whole world. And then I look across about 50 miles away. I could just barely see the tops of the skyscrapers. And I go, "Oh, there is man." Right? And I just remember thinking, "Oh my God, God is so much bigger than I ever thought." Right? My feeling about the presence of the Lord or God or spiritual, whatever, just went boom, huge. And I'm like, "What? I have lots of difficulties. Why is it's a lot easier to give your difficulties to a higher power that is immense, right? If it's overwhelmingly huge, then why not? Just turn it over." And I tell guys this all the time, especially in early recovery. They'll go, "Oh, Rand, I want to drink so bad." "Yeah, I know. Just, okay, play with it for a little while and then just go like this. Just go, 'God, I don't want to drink today. You take my obsession,' and just go, 'You take it.' And then just breathe." And they go, "Wow, that works." Right? Make your God bigger. If you're having trouble with things in life, turn it over. And it could be whatever God you want it to be. Mine's a loving God with mercy. That's it.
great way to wrap up. And I'm on your website right here. It's randtimmerman.com. It's got your book, it's got your latest podcast appearances, it's got a YouTube video that has you reading some passages from the book. So if anyone wants to connect with you, is that the best way to do it?
Sure. Yep. And they can send me
Okay.
emails. Sure.
Good deal. And it's also got a link to buy the book. You can buy it on Ingram and Bookshop and that big, huge retailer that's online that we all get boxes on our doorstep from. So yeah, you can get it there as well. And Rand, thank you so much for spending time today talking about your adventure on the Appalachian Trail and everything that was involved with that. That's really inspirational. Thank you.
you. And James, thank you for the opportunity. I think you have a really great podcast. I certainly encourage your audience to check it out and to listen to your programs, because you do a great job. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion.